Bobby Jones here for MeidasTouch and Valor Media Networks. Amateurs think tactics, professionals think logistics. That's a saying that's long been a part of U.S. military culture, especially amongst the planning cells of the United States military. Well, the USA Today broke a story that reflects either a lack of planning or the situation is much more dire than the president and the Secretary of Defense have been saying. In the article, the USA Today has people, families, military family members who are saying that their servicemen and women are not being fed properly on board U.S. Navy warships that are deployed to the Middle East in support of the operations against Iran. The pictures show pretty barren plates, basically canned food that has been laid out there, and that sailors are saying that the ship is having to ration, the various ships are having to ration what food stores that they have left. Now, for someone who has been told by the president and the Secretary of Defense that the United States is dominating in this war, and as someone who not only deployed there many times, but was headquartered to deal with specifically the Strait of Hormuz, I have a hard time digesting what the president and the Secretary of Defense are saying. And here's why. Reportedly in the article, thousands of care packages, packages that families send to their loved ones while they're deployed, have been held up because there is no mail getting to these ships that are deployed there. Now, the United States Postal Service has mechanisms that has mail delivered to ships. It's how sailors and Marines get to vote when they're on deployment, et cetera, et cetera. But out of the hundreds of zip codes that are attached to military units, 27 of them have been currently suspended with no end date in sight. This is because the logistical nodes of the United States supply line in the Middle East have been cut off. And what do I mean by that? Well, I mean that over the entire geographical area of the Middle East and where the United States operates, there are bases, right? Those bases have been attacked, but not just attacked, specifically the bases and their logistical pieces, the storage warehouses where they would hold the mail, where they would store the food, etc., have been hit. This is important because specifically for U.S. Navy warships, replenishment ships pull into these ports, get the mail, get the fuel, get the supplies, get the goods that sailors need to exist on these ships, and then take it from there and meet these ships out somewhere in the ocean and replenish them. It's a cyclical thing. It can be every 5 days, a week, or something like that. But ships plan to get fresh food, more fuel, and all of these different things for operations to continue. It's part of what's called the Combat Logistics Force in the United States Navy. And there are, about 30 of them total that go all over the world and conduct these missions. It's what allows the United States warships to stay on station at sea for hundreds of days at a time. Well, if there's no place for these ships to pull in, those bases that I mentioned that got hit, well, where are you going to get your replenishment from? And Iran was very strategic in the bases that they struck. When they hit Bahrain, they hit Fifth Fleet's headquarters, which has a ton of storage area. In UAE, they hit the port of Jebel Ali, where I was stationed and did work and actually saw the mail and saw the food and all that stuff that got sent to other ships while protecting them when they pull into harbor. As a matter of fact, Jebel Ali is the busiest port the United States uses in the Middle East. It got hit immediately. So with all these nodes being cut off, right? How is it that we expect ships to continue to stay at sea in the best operating conditions? Okay. Now, the Pentagon, specifically Pete Hegseth, dropped a lot of numbers that sounded impressive. They said, hey, 6 million meals have been served to all of these sailors that are deployed there, and that the food is not an issue, that each ship left with 30 plus days of food, etc. And he's right. He's not mentioning, though, the caloric intake each sailor is going to get. And that matters when you are on a flight deck crew in the middle of a desert area and it's 120 degrees outside and you're wearing gear and you're only getting a flour tortilla and refried beans. That's a problem. Or he's not mentioning that when you do go on deployment, you have about, a week to 2 weeks of fresh food and vegetables. And after that, it goes bad. And if you can't get any more, you just rely on canned goods. So that is why when I saw the pictures that the Pentagon released showing that sailors are not starving, that they're eating, all I saw were canned goods, canned meat, canned vegetables, everything like that. And now the families of the military members that are deployed are telling us that, hey, their care packages aren't getting there. And there are thousands that are just sitting there waiting to be delivered, which has, some non-perishable food for these guys, hygiene products for these guys, all of these things that you need to just subsist, let alone do your job. They're not getting there. And when the families have asked the Department of Defense directly, there has been no comments released. The only time the comments have been released was when the national media, the USA Today, and now others have asked this question, have we gotten a response? And this is where the credibility issue with the administration becomes an issue. Because throughout this entire time of this conflict, we will get an initial report and then there's a revision. About how many things have been destroyed, and then it's not so many. Or when a plane got hit, that didn't happen. And then the video of the plane getting hit is shown on worldwide TV. All of a sudden, they admit that this has happened. All of these things and the lack of credibility are now coming into play when we're worried about sailors actually being able to eat and do their damn jobs. When you factor in the blockade that the United States is doing, and then the strait being shut down by Iran, where are these ships going to go to get these replenishments? Where are these ships going to go to get refueling? All of this matters. The supply line has to move further away from the Strait of Hormuz and the Persian Gulf due to the lack of accessibility that these ships have to those ports. And if nothing else, despite all the rhetoric you hear from the Department of Defense, if everything was going the way they said, the domination of the sea, the domination of the air, the domination of land, you would have these ships being able to pull in wherever they wanted to, get replenishment, and go back out. They would show you video of it happening. They're not going to. And most importantly, the USS George H.W. Bush, one of the newest aircraft carriers and one of the most powerful warships in the world, had to go all the way around the Cape of Good Hope, around the southern portion of Africa, to get to the Middle East from Norfolk, Virginia, because they did not want to go through the Suez Canal into the Red Sea and have to deal with the Houthis. So logistic arms destroyed. And then on top of that, you don't have the freedom of navigation that you say exists because your most powerful warship cannot go where it wants to. And you have families that want answers, immediate answers on the welfare and the feeding of their loved ones. None of those things should be outside the pale of what the United States military's leadership, specifically the Secretary of Defense and the President of the United States, should be able to answer. But instead of answering these questions, instead of showing us what's actually happening, we're relying on reports from families. The Pentagon press corps is still trying to get into the building, and we're supposed to trust a man in Donald Trump and another man in Pete Hegseth that has lied repeatedly about what's going on in this conflict. That is not leadership. That's an abdication.
Love this video? Support independent media and unlock exclusive content, ad-free videos, and custom emojis by becoming a paid member of our YouTube channel today. You can also gift memberships to others. Let's keep growing together.